The year was 1540. Behind the glittering walls of Hampton Court Palace, a king was rotting alive. His legs oozed pus through silk stockings, and the sweet, sick smell of decay haunted every corridor. But instead of facing his own corruption, Henry VIII found someone else to blame. The woman he called his queen. This is not a love story. It's the story of a tyrant, a body in decay. And the woman who survived him. Behind the glittering walls of Hampton Court Palace, the man once called the Lion of England had become a shadow of himself. King Henry VIII, the towering monarch who once dazzled Europe with charm and strength, was now a rotting corpse inside royal robes. His legs, swollen and ulcerated, leaked pus and blood through layers of silk. The stench of decay followed him everywhere. Courtiers learned to breathe through their mouths when he entered a room, pretending not to notice the sweet, sick smell that clung to the air long after he was gone. But beneath the perfumes and the golden garments, the king's body was betraying him, and his mind was following close behind. Physicians of the time had no real understanding of infection. They wrapped his wounds in linen, rubbed honey and vinegar over the sores, and prayed that God might spare the king from the pain that drove him half mad. He could barely climb stairs without help. His armor no longer fit his swollen body. The man who once jousted for love now needed mechanical aids just to walk. But what terrified Henry most wasn't death, it was humiliation. The great King of England could no longer perform as a man. His body had become a battlefield of disease, and his pride refused to surrender. So he built a lie. A lie that would destroy the life of an innocent woman. Across the Channel, in the German Duchy of Cleves, a young woman named Anne was preparing to become England's new queen. Anne of Cleves, 24 years old, intelligent, disciplined, and dutiful. She spoke several languages, could play the lute, and was raised to serve the needs of her family and her country before her own heart. Her brother, Duke Wilhelm, was a powerful figure among the Protestant princes of northern Germany. To him, Anne's marriage was not romance, it was politics. A union that would protect Protestant England against the Catholic empires closing in from Europe. For Henry, the alliance promised safety. For Anne, it promised honor. Neither of them knew it would end in humiliation and horror. Henry had never met Anne, but he already thought he loved her. He had been shown a portrait, painted by the famous court artist Hans Holbein. In that painting, Anne appeared graceful, serene, her face calm and pure beneath a German headdress. Henry studied that portrait obsessively. He built fantasies around it, imagining the perfect wife who would heal his loneliness, restore his virility, and renew his image as England's golden monarch. His courtiers, desperate to please him, added to the illusion. They whispered tales of her beauty, her soft voice, her gentle nature. And Henry, drowning in opium and pride, believed every word. In December 1539, Anne arrived in England after a long and exhausting journey. Her ships carried gifts, letters, and dowries, symbols of peace between two powerful realms. Crowds cheered her arrival. The air was thick with celebration, music, and hope. But fate had already decided the ending. Henry, impatient to see his bride, decided to surprise her. Disguised as a common messenger, a trick borrowed from medieval romance, he burst into her chambers at Rochester. Anne, polite but confused, failed to recognize him. When the king tried to kiss her, she recoiled, startled by the behavior of this strange man. It was a small misunderstanding, but for Henry's ego, it was fatal. He expected adoration. He found only confusion. And in that moment, something inside him turned to ice. Witnesses said his expression darkened instantly. The mighty King of England, ruler of millions, felt rejected by a woman he hadn't even married yet. To admit his own fear of frailty was impossible. So he blamed her. When Henry finally revealed his identity, Anne knelt respectfully, but the damage was done. He left her chambers furious, muttering that she was nothing like her portrait. To his advisors, he hissed that she smelled foul, that her body was unappealing, that he could never bring himself to touch her. These words were poison, dripping into every corner of the court. And they would grow into the lie that would define her life. The wedding went ahead anyway, on January 6, 1540. Politics demanded it. England needed the alliance too badly to cancel the union. So the ceremony proceeded, but it was not a celebration. It was an execution in slow motion. Henry stood resplendent in gold and white, his leg wounds hidden beneath perfumed cloth. Anne, radiant and hopeful, had no idea that her husband already despised her. She spoke her vows clearly, her voice steady, unaware that she had already been condemned. Those who attended said the king's smile never reached his eyes. That night, the royal bedchamber became a theater of horror. Henry approached the marriage bed with trembling legs and an aching body. The ulcers on his thighs had burst open under the heat. The sheets were soaked with blood before the night was over. The king, unable to perform, blamed Anne. He claimed she was unattractive, that her body repulsed him, that her very presence killed his desire. But the truth was simpler and uglier. Henry's body was dying. And he needed someone else to carry the shame. The next morning, his courtiers heard the story directly from the king's lips. He had tried, he said, but could not bring himself to do his duty. Anne, he claimed, was so unpleasant that he felt physically ill. He even invented a smell, like bad fish, he whispered, a grotesque metaphor that would haunt her forever. Those lies spread through the palace like infection. Every noble, every servant, every ambassador repeated the same poisonous tale. The German queen was ugly, unclean, unfit for the king. No one dared to contradict Henry. To question the king's word was to risk the scaffold. And so, a woman who had done nothing wrong became a national joke. In the weeks that followed, Anne's humiliation deepened. Her ladies-in-waiting began to report on her every movement, twisting small mistakes into proof of foreign foolishness. She used the wrong fork at dinner, scandalous. She spoke with a heavy accent, disgraceful. Even her perfume was mocked as strange and heavy. Henry's courtiers, sensing his anger, competed to mock her most creatively. They exaggerated her features, imitated her accent, and spread rumors that she disgusted the king simply by existing. And all the while, Anne stayed silent. Silence was her only defense. She had seen what happened to those who defied Henry, like Anne Boleyn, who had lost her head not far from where Anne now slept. So she smiled through the insults, bowed when insulted, and prayed in the quiet hours for God to give her strength. But Henry's cruelty was not content with whispers. He ordered physicians to examine her body, searching for the defects that made her unfit for him. Men she had never met before were told to touch her, to describe her to the court, to confirm the king's lies with pseudo-medical authority. The reports they wrote became official documents, evidence that Anne was unsuitable for royal marriage. It was not medicine. It was humiliation disguised as law. And as Henry began to court another woman, a teenage girl named Catherine Howard, the machinery of Anne's destruction was already turning. The king wanted freedom. His advisors wanted survival. And Anne would be sacrificed for both. By the end of that spring, the same diplomats who had celebrated her arrival now whispered about her downfall. The court poets wrote verses mocking the German bride who couldn't please a king. Foreign ambassadors sent letters home describing the smell of rot in Henry's court, not from Anne, but from Henry himself. His body was falling apart, his mind clouded by pain and opium. Yet still, he needed someone else to blame. In the eyes of the court, the king was divine. And if God's chosen ruler could not love his wife, then surely it must be her fault. That was the logic of tyranny, and Anne of Cleves was its latest victim. But unlike the others, she would survive. Not by fighting. Not by pleading. But by learning how to outlast the monster who ruled her life. The spring of 1540 was supposed to bring renewal to the English court. But instead, it carried the foul scent of betrayal. Anne of Cleves had been queen for barely 6 months, yet the walls of Hampton Court already whispered her funeral hymns. She had done nothing wrong, that was the horror of it. No treason. No adultery. No crime. Her only sin was that she had failed to awaken desire in a man whose own body was decaying from within. Henry VIII, desperate to appear virile, told his courtiers that his bride disgusted him. He spoke of her as if she were a defective object, a mistake to be returned to sender. Each lie he told about her, that she smelled, that her body was strange, that her breasts were unappealing, became a dagger of gossip carried by the courtiers who lived to please him. They laughed behind her back. They mocked her accent, her clothes, even her diet. What none of them saw was that Anne was listening, and calculating. Anne of Cleves had been trained for politics since childhood. She knew that survival at court was not about truth or justice, it was about timing. Every gesture, every silence, every word had weight. And so she did the only thing she could do. She endured. She smiled when Henry passed her by without a glance. She bowed when his new favorite, the teenage Catherine Howard, entered the room. She accepted humiliation as a mask, a disguise beneath which her mind remained clear and sharp. Henry believed he was destroying her. In truth, he was teaching her how to win. Behind closed doors, the machinery of annulment began to grind. Thomas Cromwell, the king's chief minister and the man who had arranged the marriage, was ordered to find a way out of it. It was the ultimate irony, the man who had built the alliance would now have to dismantle it. And he knew that failure meant death. Cromwell scoured old church laws, searching for a loophole that could free the king without making him look like a fool. His clerks worked day and night, forging arguments about non-consummation and deception. They whispered of how the marriage had never been completed, how the king had touched his wife no more than a sister. The irony was painful. Henry's impotence was now a matter of royal record, yet somehow Anne would take the blame. Anne's rooms were filled with tension. Her ladies avoided her eyes. The music that once echoed through her chambers had fallen silent. She walked through the corridors like a ghost, waiting for the blade that never came. Then came the examinations. Under the guise of medicine, Henry ordered his physicians to inspect his wife. They were to determine whether she was physically suitable for consummation, an instruction so degrading that even hardened courtiers flinched. But orders were orders. The doctors arrived with cold hands and colder hearts. Anne endured their touch in silence, her face blank, her dignity unbroken. When their reports were written, they confirmed what the king demanded. That Anne's body was somehow imperfect, her womanhood uninviting. Not a single physician dared mention that it was the king whose flesh was rotting from disease. Henry's shame became her sentence. The propaganda spread quickly. Pamphlets whispered that foreign women were unsuitable for English men. Poets wrote mocking verses about the German bride with no fire. Even the clergy joined in, declaring that the union had offended divine order. Anne saw the pattern clearly. She was being erased. Her image, her name, her worth, all rewritten to protect the illusion of the king's power. And yet, she refused to collapse under it. Each insult hardened her resolve. If she could not control what they said about her, she would control how she responded. Where Henry raged, she remained calm. Where others wept, she smiled. And when asked about the rumors, she said only, "His Majesty must act as God directs his conscience." Those words were perfect. They sounded humble, submissive, but they carried quiet venom. She had placed the weight of morality on Henry's shoulders, where it belonged. Meanwhile, Cromwell's position collapsed. The man who had once commanded England's destiny was now the scapegoat for its humiliation. Henry turned on him with feral delight, accusing him of treason and heresy. The king's rage needed blood, and Cromwell's would do. Anne was still queen when her greatest ally was dragged to the Tower. She heard the news without flinching. Cromwell's execution was scheduled for July 28, 1540, the very day Henry would marry Catherine Howard. One man's death, one girl's coronation, one woman's humiliation, all in the same morning. The symbolism was clear even to the servants. The old order was being torn down and replaced with youth, beauty, and obedience. The king was cleansing himself with other people's blood. In the weeks leading to her annulment, Anne's composure became legendary. She dined with courtiers who gossiped about her downfall and thanked them for their company. She appeared at church beside the very man who was orchestrating her public degradation. Foreign ambassadors wrote home in astonishment. The German princess, they said, showed the courage of a saint and the patience of a queen. But make no mistake, she was not a saint. She was a strategist. That same day, Thomas Cromwell was led to the scaffold. As the drums rolled, he proclaimed his innocence and prayed for his king's soul. Moments later, the axe fell. His head was displayed to the crowd while Henry feasted with his new bride. From her estate at Richmond Palace, Anne received the news quietly. She said only, I am glad to be out of that danger." And she meant it. Catherine Howard, the young girl who had replaced her, now held the most cursed position in England. Anne understood that better than anyone. She had seen what Henry did to those he once adored. In the months that followed, Anne began to rebuild her life. Her new home became a sanctuary, free from the king's moods, free from the venom of courtiers. She learned English fluently, managed her estates with precision, and surrounded herself with scholars and musicians from both England and Germany. She wrote letters to her brother, assuring him that she was safe, that the alliance still stood, that there was no need for war. In truth, she had done more for peace by surrendering than all the diplomats combined. Henry, meanwhile, was descending further into madness. His leg ulcers worsened, his temper became legendary. Catherine Howard's youthful beauty delighted him for a brief moment, until rumors of her infidelity reached his ears. Within 18 months, she was dead, executed for treason. And when Henry's eyes turned again toward Anne, she greeted him not with fear, but with polite indifference. He found her radiant. He even visited her estates, dining with her as though nothing had happened. Those who witnessed the reunion said the king seemed at peace in her presence, perhaps because she no longer threatened his pride. She was no longer his wife. She was something rarer, a woman who had survived him. By the time the year ended, Anne of Cleves was one of the most respected women in England. She had her own wealth, her own household, her own freedom, luxuries no other wife of Henry VIII would ever know. She attended court on special occasions, dressed in fine silks, greeted as the king's beloved sister. Behind the title lay a truth the courtiers dared not speak. She had beaten the king at his own game. Henry's power could destroy anyone, but Anne had found the one strategy that worked against tyranny. Not rebellion. Not defiance. But quiet endurance. By accepting humiliation, she had turned it into armor. In the years to come, she would outlive Henry and half his court. The man who had called her the smell of dead fish would rot in his coffin while she ruled her estates with dignity. She would fund schools, aid the poor, and become the quiet matriarch of a kingdom built on chaos. Anne of Cleves had entered England as a bride. She would leave history as something greater. The queen who refused to die. By the final years of Henry VIII's reign, the royal court had become a cemetery of lost queens. Catherine of Aragon, dead. Anne Boleyn, beheaded. Jane Seymour, buried in white. Catherine Howard, executed before her 22nd birthday. Only one remained standing, Anne of Cleves, the woman England had mocked, the bride the king could neither love nor destroy. While Henry's ulcers deepened and his temper devoured the men around him, Anne lived quietly at Richmond Palace. Her halls smelled not of rot or politics, but of baked bread, lilacs, and candle wax. She spent her mornings reading scripture, her afternoons managing estates, and her evenings listening to German musicians who reminded her of home. The woman once called the foul German mare had become a beloved figure among her servants and neighbors. Henry's courtiers often visited her, careful, polite, a little afraid. They expected bitterness and found serenity. She spoke of the king with calm respect, never revenge, never hate. It unsettled them more than anger would have. For in her composure they saw something they could not understand, freedom. When news reached her that Catherine Howard had been executed, Anne simply whispered, "Poor child." No triumph. No satisfaction. Only pity. She had learned the lesson that others never grasped: Henry's love was the most dangerous poison in England. As the king's health crumbled, he occasionally summoned Anne to court. Witnesses said he smiled in her presence as if relieved. She no longer threatened his pride, she was beyond his reach. He called her "my sister" still, a title that once disguised humiliation but had become a crown of survival. When Henry finally died in 1547, England mourned its tyrant. Anne did not attend the funeral. She stayed at Richmond, praying in silence, knowing the nightmare was finally over. The man who had tried to break her was buried beneath stone and lead, his coffin swelling with corruption until it burst. The smell of death that once haunted Anne's name now belonged to him alone. Under the new reign of Edward VI, Anne became a quiet matriarch of Protestant England. She sponsored scholars, funded schools, and offered sanctuary to refugees fleeing Catholic persecution. Even Queen Mary, Henry's Catholic daughter, respected her wisdom and restraint. She had become, in the eyes of both sides, something holy, an emblem of endurance. Anne of Cleves died peacefully in 1557. Her funeral at Westminster Abbey drew nobles and diplomats from across Europe. She was buried not as a discarded wife, but as a woman who had defeated a king. History remembers her as the lucky queen who kept her head. But the truth runs deeper. She was the one who won by refusing to play the game. The woman who proved that sometimes, survival itself is the greatest form of revenge.